And I also think it's a power principle, that people have the power over information, and you want to know and you don't get to know unless they want you to know. And the power is more invested in them if they don't tell than if they do. However, even still, in my many, many years of doing this job now, I would go back and forth with guys like you during the deep dish days of the war on terror. And you guys would say, I am not telling you this stuff because I got guys on the ground, and you're going to compromise where they are, and you're going to compromise what we're doing to get these bad guys. And I'm not telling you, and that's why. And I didn't like it, but I understood it. What I don't understand here is, if everybody is going to nod and wink so much so that even politicians who are desperate to play the gotcha game and play to advantage won't even go near it, usually the secrecy would be satisfying something worthy of protecting. And here, if everybody's going to nod and wink like, look, it's not little green men, okay? That's not, well, if it's not anything extreme like that, which I totally can appreciate, then why won't you tell us? Because they're more locked down in this area than they were in telling me what they were doing to find Osama bin Laden. I knew more about that than I do about this. I don't get it.
Yeah, so let me say a couple things in response to your question. First of all, you're absolutely right about the power. Classified information is almost like a currency in the bureaucracy, and they hoard it, and then they exchange it and trade it. I'll give you access to this, maybe if you do X and Y. So it happens, in 9/11, the problem was not lack of information being provided to the public. It was lack of information sharing between FBI and CIA.
Right.
So it even works between these intelligence agencies. They have major problems sharing information, which goes back to that power issue and the culture and all of that. So that's absolutely a huge part of it. In the case of this data, we do have to remember that there's a difference between cover up and classifying, and both could be involved in this case with UAP. Former DNI Radcliffe mentioned that we have satellite imagery of UAP. He didn't go any further in that description. I think if that information were released or characterized, it would go a considerable way towards helping the public and the scientific community better understand what we're dealing with. I'm aware of some of this information. The problem that we have is that many of these same sensors are used to support warfighting. And there is legitimate concern, of course, about compromising anything that helps give our people an edge in combat. Some of these sensors, the public and our adversaries don't even know exist. Some of the most useful sensors in some cases are that highly classified and secret. There are other cases like satellite imagery where the issue is trying to disguise the precise degree of resolution that we can get and that sort of thing to make it harder for adversaries to know what we can do and plan around it. And sometimes, they don't draw the line in the right place. In this case, even some DoD officials have acknowledged to me, and in fact, the head of Aero, that they think the classification guide should be revised. It should be to accommodate more openness and more information sharing. But we do run into a legitimate problem in many cases with trying to share the information without compromising the capability.
I get it. And I get it, not because I have your expertise, nothing like it. I've just been, talking to people like you for a long time. But when we're dealing with terrorism and they were, whatever it was, searching for bin Laden or whatever it was, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, whatever it was, whatever group they were dealing with, there'd be a balance of, look, we want people to know we're doing everything we can to keep them safe. And we're finding these guys. We're doing whatever it is, whatever the goal of the moment was, the ambition of the moment, the fear of the moment was. They didn't want to give away tactical advantage. Makes sense. Operational security, OPSEC, as you guys say, makes sense. But they also didn't want the public scared as hell and not trusting their efforts to keep them safe. So they had to say the right things at the right time and give what they had to give. Here, that dynamic doesn't happen. So they let people believe crazy things that they could easily dispel. And, as simple as saying, it's not a box that has unknown propulsion capabilities. We know what it is. We know how it works. We know who sent it. And, it is a matter of national security. And that would be it. And I'm not saying that's the explanation for all of them, because I don't think they know the explanation for all of them. But it would at least balance the public interest. They don't even do that here. And then a guy like you comes with a pedigree that, could exhaust Wikipedia. And you say that the best explanation for some of these things is that they are extraterrestrial, and everybody's heads explode. Why do you believe that? And what did you want people to take from it?
Well, so I've not taken the position that any of these things or specific cases are necessarily of extraterrestrial origin, but there are cases like the Nimitz incident where I don't know how else to explain it. And my main point is that we need to keep an open mind and not rule that out. If we look scientifically at what we know today, various astronomers, PhDs and publications have a range of estimates about the number of intelligent civilizations that are currently existing in the Milky Way, that we share this galaxy with. We know the direction of technology and artificial intelligence. We know that, so for example, one Russian, Yuri Milner, is building a spacecraft, a probe, to send to another star system, to Alpha Centauri, right now. That's not even a nation state. One rich Russian guy can fund an interstellar probe. Why would we think that civilizations that might be 1 billion years older than us and more advanced couldn't send probes out for purposes of exploration, even possibly self-reproducing probes? So my point is really, let's follow the facts wherever they lead, keep everything on the table. And we have some cases where the aviators themselves who were witnessing these events, they're saying it could not have been made by man. These are people who know what we can do. They've got security clearances. They're patriots. They're sober. They have 20/20 eyesight, and they're seeing objects doing things that are way beyond anything that we can do, even in our most cutting edge programs. And I have friends at who've worked at the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works for decades at the Boeing. And I talk to those guys and they're like, there's no way, we could do 1 or 2 of those things. We're talking about craft that are descending in a vertical line in a couple of seconds from 80,000 feet to 20,000 feet, hovering, instantaneously accelerating to hypervelocity, hypersonic speeds without friction, without plasma, without breaking the sound barrier. I mean, a lot of stuff that is utterly baffling and so far beyond what we're capable of that you're trying to find a hypothesis that fits the facts. And
unless you just dismiss it as being fake and made up.
Yeah. And so, you could say, well, all those radar operators on the USS Princeton and all those aviators in the 3 different F-18s, which have 2 aviators on each, and saw this thing at close range in broad daylight, combat veterans in some cases, including the squadron commander, who was the guy who got closest to it. This was an enlisted guy in the Marine Corps, got served on a carrier, decided he wanted to fly fighter jets, went back into the military, became an officer, got a college degree, became an aviator. I mean, you're talking about, super gung-ho, patriotic, hardworking Americans here. We're not talking about crazy people.
Right, who are all either duped or dumb, or they're completely hyper devoted, and that's very, very unlikely. But
and if I may say,
please,
it's really important that to bear in mind, not only did multiple pilots see it in broad daylight, but multiple radar systems confirmed what they saw, and then there was an infrared video of the object on top of it. So we have, maybe 10, 15 witnesses, all U.S. military. There's sensor data that confirms it and so forth. So I think what I'm saying is of course, there's a possibility that somebody else's space program has found us in an infinite universe. This universe is so strange and so bizarre and so immense. Why would we be surprised if we encountered intelligent machines from somewhere else?
The entire issue to me, again, it's about transparency. It's about what we accept and what we don't and on what basis. And it's interesting to me what a kind of lens the issue is. Like, I'll have people mock that I cover this, okay? Because I could be spending more time on Donald Trump's obvious efforts to destroy the democracy, including stealing confidential, classified, whatever you want to call it, to distribute that we now know he was using it as like notepaper. And I'll say, you really believe that Donald Trump's goal was to do anything other than serve his own end and get elected again? You really think he wanted to destroy democracy? You really think he's another Hitler? You really believe that? And they do. They'll say, yeah, I look at all this, but you mock the notion that we may not understand where these aircraft come from. That you mock, but you totally are invested in the fact that he's a Russian operative. Or you're totally convinced that Joe Biden is brain dead and being controlled by pedophiles. That you believe because of something you saw on Alex Jones, but the idea that there could be other life in the universe you find preposterous, but you believe in God. I am a Christian by choice, but I cannot be open to the possibility of other life, but I am open to the possibility, in fact, the existence of a supernatural intelligence that knows all and controls all here, including the grace of free will. That's okay. Nobody's going to make any points in America by saying you're stupid to believe in God. But on this issue, it's like everybody suspends all of the normal instincts they use on every other issue. I don't get it.
Yeah, I've been giving that a lot of thought. It's quite interesting that if you look at Hollywood treatment of this issue with aliens, people love it. Some of the biggest franchises going. Star Wars has got like 17 million followers on Facebook or something. The biggest UFO organization's got a pitiful like 40,000. And so there's a huge gap here. And I asked myself, what explains that? And why don't more people share my interest in this, given it's an existential issue? There's nothing that would be more transformative and no greater discovery that we could make than finding out that some advanced civilization is actually operating in proximity to our planet, right? So why is that? And I think looking back historically, and it's hard to find any perfect analog, but we always have, every group has, every ethnicity, tribal group, sort of a sense of superiority in the world of the universe is about them. The Copernican revolution was a shock that we're not the center of the universe. And those shocks have continued. Then we found out, well, there's not just one galaxy and we're not even near the center of it. We're in a random place out on the periphery. And it took years and years for people to accept Darwinian evolution and process that despite overwhelming evidence. So I think it's quite natural, particularly when you have this element of fear. Two other things. One, people have been inculcated in the belief that this is crazy and you shouldn't take it seriously, in part because the U.S. government fostered that belief deliberately. And also, what is true for many of us, and the research shows this, most people don't bother to look at the facts or do any independent research. The average person, if you say, do you believe in, man-made climate change or not? The answer you get is going to be based on what their friends think, what their group thinks. If they're a conservative group in Texas, they'll probably say no.
What they want to be true as a function of their own identification.
Yeah. So a lot of this, for many people, what is true and what they believe is not based on an examination of data or facts. It's based on what their peer group thinks. And people like to fit in and they want to go along to get along, and it's easier that way. And there's a huge, traditionally the overwhelming view has been that this UFO thing is crazy. And it's hard for a lot of people to shake that. It's also a difficult thing to process. So I think there are a variety of reasons that you still get that kind of reaction, even at a time when our government is saying flat out, this is real. This is happening. We don't know where we can't explain hundreds of cases.
They need to say that more and louder. And I am shocked. Again, this issue has really grabbed me, and not because I believe that they have alien bodies. I don't know if they do. I don't know if they don't. I'm not going to stake my reputation on it, but I'm open to it. But most importantly, I want to know. And what bothers me about this issue, and I did direct it at the White House, but only because they're so, they're coming into an election year where they're like desperate for a winning narrative. Why wouldn't you grab hold of this issue and say, I'm going to be the guy who makes the government that I'm running tell us more about this stuff? Even if it is, yeah, Chris, there are hundreds of things that we know were here that we have no idea where they came from. And we know nothing more than you do. And in fact, most of this stuff is not found in military airspace. It's, there are people with cameras all over this world. There are billions of cameras out there that capture things. You shouldn't only be hearing from us about it. Even that would be such a great issue to grandstand on as a politician. I mean, they stand on complete bullshit all the time. They'll make up an issue and use it to advantage. And this one is real and right in front of them, and they won't touch it. Baffles me, except until we get to what you were talking about. What was a philosophical extension of what they used to call solipsism, that you believe the sun revolves around you. You are the center of anything, as an extension of narcissism. And we are that culturally. We need to be all important. And the other aphorism that we all grew up with, we mock what we don't understand. And we're afraid of the unknown. And we would rather dismiss it and devalue it and debase it than deal with it, because that's easier and it's more comforting. And that's really what I think we're taking on here. And I know that we're optimistic before the hearing, that you believe, like some other guys that I've had on the podcast and on my show, we're moving in the right direction. I don't know yet. I don't know that anything has been offered that is suggestive of a change in the state of play. Am I being too cynical?
Maybe a little bit. And I say that because we certainly have made enormous progress since 2017 when I got into this issue. We now have an office dedicated to this, studying this subject jointly between the intelligence community and DOD. NASA is getting involved. They actually even spoke to the issue you just raised about crowdsourcing and trying to make use of people's cell phone data and commercial pilot encounters and so forth. The data is being collected. We're now at a point, as soon as they started to give people permission to talk about this, we had an explosion in the number of reports. The initial report from DOD came in and said we had 144 reports since 2007 or 2004, which was a bogus number and it was way too low, but that's what they came up with. They were like, the Air Force didn't even cooperate, essentially. But since then, and since they've started telling the pilots, we actually want you to report this stuff, we're now well over 800, probably over 1,000 in just 2 years. So we went from 144 over 20 years. We're now at like 100 or more, 50 to 100 per month, according to Arrow. So data is being collected. There has been a change in the degree to which the perceived legitimacy of the issue, even though there's still a lot of resistance. And commercial airline pilots are also reporting. Private sector organizations, scientific organizations, the Galileo Project at Harvard, led by Dr. Loeb, which I'm one of the volunteer supporters for. All of those things are moving us forward. There absolutely is information the government has not shared. And there's information they haven't even shared with Congress. classified information. And that gets a bit arcane and complex. I do think that absolutely more information should be shared. There should be more openness, but we're now in a very different spot, certainly than we were in 2017. And so I think great progress has been made. If you had asked me in 2015, say, can you get Congress to hold a hearing on UFOs or pass legislation on this topic? It would have been laughable. It would have seemed just crazy, impossible. So I do think we've come a long way, and I do think we're making it. I think you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Right. Now that you're saying we have to report this stuff, and people are looking, and sensors are recording, and radar data is coming in, and so forth, that stuff is going into the books and it's on the record. And they have to have an unclassified report that goes to Congress. The oversight committees are asking questions. So I don't think that we're going to go backwards on this. I think we're going to go forwards. The question is, at what rate are we going to go forward? How quickly will they be actually more open and honest with Congress and the public?
What is the most obvious next?
Well, one of the things that's hanging fire, of course, is the Schumer Amendment. So Senator Schumer has introduced a rather extraordinary bit of information that would require all agencies and departments to release all information they have on UFOs, on UAP. And if there is any information which they claim should not be released to the public, they have to submit it to a presidential commission that would be established by this legislation that would independently review that claim that it shouldn't be released. So that is a potentially huge step forward. It's unclear. It's going to take time. They have to appoint people to the commission. Then the agencies have to begin the process of collecting the records and data, submitting it to the National Archives. And then that commission is going to have to engage in a sort of step-by-step process of reviewing individual documents or categories of documents, satellite data from 20 years ago when our capabilities were much less versus satellite data from last year and all sorts of things like that. So it's going to take time, particularly for the classified information, the information that they want to retain and not release to the public. But we might see a great deal of additional insight into what the government actually has and knows as a result of that legislation. So that's probably the next big step item that's on the agenda. Will they get through conference? Will it be in the bill signed by law by the president? I think it will.